So every now and again something comes along that sounds too good to be true. We are looking in depth at a company that are contributing 20% of the deposit towards the 25% deposit you need to buy properties. So yep, they're putting the 20% in, so you only need 5%. What's that all about? Watch this webinar and you will find out. It's pretty amazing and quite eye-opening. Alright, so very good evening to you and thank you for joining us this evening. Something I didn't ask you last time, your background in properties. Obviously having a conversation with you, you're pretty up on the lingo as such. Do you want to give everyone a little bit of a background on where your property journey's come from?
Yeah, no, definitely. I suppose my property journey started really at the age of 16, really 17 actually. I was a bit of a failed golf professional, never good enough to sort of like take it any further, and I was sold on the property industry that I could drive around looking at houses in a company car and taking pictures for my job, and I was sold quite easily on that, and then it quickly turned into quite a very deep love for property. So in my early career I worked as an estate agent in the Midlands regions, to the point where I was managing sort of like 20 plus branches as a sales director. At that point I came out of agency, moved into surveying, became a chartered surveyor, doing mortgage valuations and building surveys. From there it moved into asset management, into investment management, into development management, and then into fund management. So yeah, it's been quite a varied career, nearly 25 years in the industry now, and it's just a very deep love for it, and I'm one of those lucky people that still loves what I do every day of the week. So yeah, it's been quite a varied career, but all within residential property.
So what would be your highlight of each part of your journey?
I think it's all been highlights really. I mean, for me, learning and gaining a deep understanding of residential property early on in my career as an estate agent, and seeing it really from every side of the fence has been key to really my growth aspirations in the industry really. Having been on each side of the desk and on each side of the industry, from developments through to so from land, through the planning process, through construction, buying, refurbishing, and then managing and overseeing asset management on a very large scale. It's all been highlights. There's probably nothing one thing that can pinpoint, but knowing everything through and through as I do, from a construction side to a building side and everything else, it's just a very deep love for the industry really.
So I always joke that if ever I need information about prices from an estate agent, I just tell them that I've had a surveyor valued me at the wrong price and can you help out? There's this thing like estate agents versus surveyors, aren't they? So we always get the information very quickly, whereas if we just run up and ask for the value, what they'd sold it for, they wouldn't tell us. So how's that that's a very interesting aspect. It's almost poacher gamekeeper, isn't it?
Yes, very much so, yeah.
How did that dynamic work from either side of the fence?
To be honest, obviously at the point I was moved into surveying, I'd left my agency days behind me, so I really saw it as a different approach at that point in time. But yeah, it was very interesting to see it from the other side of the fence. Obviously, as an agent, you're always striving to achieve the best possible price you can for your client when you're selling their house. And as a surveyor, you're being quite objective and looking at various other things, and in theory a lot of the time you are representing the mortgage company, so you're seeing it from a different aspect really. So yeah, they are two very different sides of the fence, but when you've got a good asset, a good residential property in a good area that's it's got a solid, it's in a solid area, the foundations are good and everything else like that, it's quite easy to ascertain what the true figure is and really move forward from that point really. So
yeah, I mean, perhaps you can help me out answering a question I get asked a lot by my clients, and let's have a look at exactly this happened to me. And so I'm asking you to put back your surveyor hat on. And I bought a property cheap, and I did a same day refinance when Mortgage Express were doing that.
Yep.
Surveyor didn't find out what I was paying for it. I put in for a remortgage at 140 rebalance, and the surveyor agreed with my valuation, and we borrowed a 119 mortgage. It was only a few weeks later when the next door neighbours also contacted me because of how quick we did the first one, and this time the same surveyor found out what I'd paid for this particular property, which again was 100, same price. I was trying to revalue it at 140, and it was in much better condition than the first one, and he refused to value it at any more than my purchase price, even though I was asking for a refinance mortgage with Mortgage Express. So how does that work when we're specifically asking for a valuation?
There's a lot of underlying, and obviously each case is worked off its own merits and things like that. But typically, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been many years since I've actually practiced as a surveyor and in that side of things on valuations or anything else. But I mean, historically, in the past, a lot of surveyors, and still to this day, really will work off comparable evidence. And when a mortgage company or just a private client who's requesting a valuation want to ascertain what a value is for a property, the surveyor needs to demonstrate proven comparables in the marketplace as to what the values are. So historically, they'll take off land registry data for sold properties, and that will be where it's derived from. So that will be typically where it fell down. You might have refinanced a higher value, but when the new ones come along, they've seen the sold price and they've based that as solid evidence that's there in black and white, which they can use. And obviously, that's what obviously sounds like what's happened, really.
My conversation was that surely there must be such thing as a fire sale price, but that particular agent surveyor wasn't having any of it. There were other agents that I dealt with quite regularly that knew I only bought a fire sale price, and so that'll work fine. Anyway, I digress a little bit. So you're in a bit of a niche business at the moment. You are getting the supply of properties that you are offering and been offering to my clients. I was probably quite harsh with you when we had our first conversation, and grilled you quite a lot to see if I could see any downside on anything you were doing. And some of my clients are already in the process of buying stuff, and because my biggest challenge, and should I mention the word inside track, that anything like that happened again. So I was very keen to make sure that what you were doing was totally different, and it certainly is. So would you like to kind of explain how somebody would be prepared? It's almost a what's in it for you thing, so they can understand from your side of the fence why you would put 20% into a property, not take any of the rent, but get 20% of the uplift at a later date. So if you can just explain exactly what you do and then why you do what you do.
Certainly. I mean, the quickest way to explain it really is if you look at institutional investment, annuity funds and everything else like that, the returns that are typically achieved on an annualised basis are pretty consistent and solid, but they're quite low on the spectrum as what you'll actually achieve as a return. Where our thinking is and our belief and obviously in practice is that actually what we can get for the funds that we are looking to allocate into this aspect, what we will achieve through capital appreciation over a mean term of sort of like anything between 5 and 13 years is actually an inflation beating rate of return that actually is probably 2 to 3 times more than what we'd achieve through a typical annuity fund in the property industry. So actually for us, it's actually a fantastic return. Where people sometimes struggle to achieve, look to understand it, is if you as a private individual, take me as a prime example, if I'm looking to inject some capital into a property, I want ideally a double-digit return on the yield that we're achieving through the property. For us, if we could achieve a 2-3% return per annum, that for us is actually a really good return. So that is, it's a different spectrum. So if you're looking to invest, if I was looking to invest personally £20,000, I'd probably want a double-digit return. If we're looking to invest £100 million, actually, if we're getting a 2 to 3% return per annum over a 5-year plus period, that's actually fantastic for us, and hence why we're keen to do it. Additionally, we have a blended portfolio. We invest 20% of our investors' money into each individual transaction. We don't have any stamp duty costs or acquisition costs because that is borne by the joint venture partner who actually buys the property with us. So we get a more balanced portfolio throughout the country that will achieve an awful lot of properties, and actually over the time that for us is a good solid investment, and one that we're very happy to invest in, really.
And do you ever invest in freeholds at all, in blocks of flats?
No, within this scheme that we're running now, there will be opportunities whereby a smaller block of apartments can be acquired. Typically those blocks will come with the freehold included. Apart from that, we're not in the market for buying freeholds. That's not our industry, it's not what we're experts in, so it's one that we stay clear from. But there are opportunities that will come available with the freehold included.
Yeah, I mean, that's just me asking because I'm in the process of buying the freehold on a block of 110 flats.
Yep.
And then it's got a cladding issue, and we're solving the cladding issue, so we're buying it cheap and solving the cladding issue, and we should get a reasonable return on the resale once we've solved the cladding problem. So again, I was asking personal questions, taking advantage of the situation. Okay, so what are you doing on here?
How do you mean, sorry?
What we are offering to my clients, if you could explain exactly how we can help the investor with their deposit money go much further.
Yeah, okay, so basically where we are in the marketplace at the moment is we, as a wider company, a core part of our business is funded part exchange, whereby we buy houses on behalf of house builders up and down the country, and the properties that come through are some of those that we offer to investors that they can come and buy, in addition to other types of properties that we have access to through different corporate partners and things. So basically what we're doing in a nutshell is basically providing residential property that is suitable for buy-to-let investment, that we are basically introducing to your clients and other people to say that you can buy this property, and what we'll actually do is support that purchase by co-investing 20% of the property's value with you, so that each individual purchaser can basically enhance their portfolio acquisition rate by basically allowing their cash to go further. So if we are funding 20% of the deposits for every single purchase, an investor with a certain amount of cash can make that cash go further over multiple purchases.
Yeah, probably like 4 times as far, wouldn't it, all in all, after your kind of nominal fees. Okay. Sorry, I'm just doing some answering of a question that somebody's just typed. So yeah, you fund the deposits for somebody, and from a builder's part exchange, I suppose it makes sense for a builder. as it being a bit of a pain in the backside, because if they take in a part exchange, typically they're going to have to sell it at a discount, but if they sell it through to you, you can move them on very quickly by giving vendors 20% towards their deposit.
Yeah, exactly that.
Cool. Okay. Well, look, if anybody's got any questions that they would like to ask this evening, please feel free to fire away, and we can answer any questions that you've got. Anybody who wants to get in contact with you can do so through us if you email info@glenarmstrong.com. Do you have a list that we're going to be able to send out for people if they're interested in any purchases?
I mean, the property typically under the scheme moves very, very quickly, as you'll testify to that, Glenn, as well. But yeah, we will be able to share a list tomorrow or later in the week or early part of next week of any available units at this moment in time. And if somebody's interested, they can request additional information, and we'll basically provide a full overview to each individual property. One thing with these properties is they've been through quite an extensive due diligence process already before they're actually offered out to any potential purchasers. So what's basically happened at the point we send out a property to somebody, we have basically already underwritten that property to say that we are happy to lend the 20% deposit on there. So yes, all of them that come through already have that comfort as such that they've already been approved by us. And then we'll just leave it down for each individual investor to ratify that purchase and make sure they're happy with it as well.
Yeah, and obviously if they're applying for a mortgage, the mortgagee is going to appoint a surveyor to come and confirm the value. But obviously, exactly, yeah. How much do you get involved with all that, using your experiences that you mentioned to everyone at the beginning, having been a surveyor, having been involved with asset finance and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, as most people understand, is the longer you're in an industry, the more your knowledge increases in the sector. Not only that, you also enhance who you know in the industry, and your contacts certainly help. So we have, over my years and as a company, we have many companies and organisations that we have relationships with that can offer each individual purchaser quite an enhanced understanding of the mortgage market or the conveyancing market or anything else associated with it, really. So we have organisations that we're more than happy to pass any buyers on to say that if they need a mortgage, these particular companies will help them. So we're more than happy to make those introductions. And it will just be that we're there to hold as many hands as possible during the process to make it as seamless as possible. I mean, from our understanding, from our point of view, the quicker each of these properties can complete, the better. Our corporate partners are relying on us to transact with speed, and that's what we do. So yeah, if our relationships can help that, then we're more than happy to make those introductions, really.
Okay. Sola's asked a question, which is a very, very good question. How will the mortgage work with will the lender be happy with what appears to be a gifted 20% deposit?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, and the way that this is being structured and why it's sort of like focused on buy-to-let investors is what we recommend is that the property is purchased via a limited company. Now, I'm no accountant or tax specialist, but there are obviously advantages of buying property via a limited company. So by buying a property via a limited company, mortgage lenders are happy because obviously there are specialist buy-to-let mortgages out there that are designed for limited companies, and what we actually do is we acquire shares within the limited company, which basically supports the 20% deposit, and because of that, it's not classified as a gifted deposit, and the lenders are happy with it.
Okay, cool. Right, Christopher said, is your company listed in the deed? And how can one avoid this from being seen as a buying club, which lenders do not like?
Okay, exactly. Again, it's very similar questions, but it's a very good one. again, because it's via a limited company, we are not registered on the mortgage deed. We are just a shareholder within the limited company. So the limited company will actually be the person named on the mortgage deed, and we will be a minority shareholder within that company, and that's all really. So there's no show of us being around on any of the title deeds or the mortgage deed.
Ivan says, what are your fees?
We basically charge a processing fee, which is £1,995, and that's payable on exchange of contracts, and that's it basically. That's our fee for actually setting up each transaction. In relation to the 20%, there's no actual fees for that. In the first 5 years, if the property is owned after 5 years, there's basically an annual charge of 1.75% of the money invested. So if we were to invest £20,000, for argument's sake, we would charge 1.75% of that £20,000, and that's an annual charge. It's not a monthly charge. And that's it. And then once the property is sold, we receive 20% of the property value at that time.
Cool. Okay. This one's a little bit off-piste, and I'm going to ask it in this way. So let's imagine that you are put your estate agency hat back on.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Catherine says, what do estate agents like to hear from would-be investors to know that they are serious? So what I would do, Catherine, when I have a pre-arranged appointment, because I've dropped an email to the agent saying what I'm looking for, and they've booked an appointment for me to go in and look at them, I would walk in, I'd have a coffee, I'd walk in early, and I would sit down with the agent, and during that conversation I would pull out literally of my case or Everdeen. I would say, here we go, I've actually brought along a copy of my passport, and here's my passport for verification. I've bought you a copy of my bank statement. I've bought you a copy of my bridging facility letter, and I've also bought you a copy of a decision in principle I've had recently. And then I would hand them to you. And I used to find, if I did that, I mean, what are you as an estate agent going to think, Dean, if I walked in and gave you that on our first meeting?
A serious purchaser basically.
And that gets you accelerated to being one of the people that the estate agents would call when they get their special deals in, which not that many people get privy to. Okay, so next question, Murray says, when they do the research on a sold property in the area, how can they tell they aren't comparing a 2-bed property to, say, a 3-bed property? I think we were talking about when we were talking about surveyors and stuff. And most properties on Rightmove Plus, which surveyors use, are typically listed on there as 1 or 2 or 3-bed properties. And also sometimes they use Home Track, which in a high percentage of cases has got the square footage of the properties that has been taken at some time. So that's how they do that. So, sorry, Dean, I'm going a little bit off piece as what these questions were, a little bit more. So let's skip a few through, and I'll go back to some of the unrelated ones in a minute. Who determines which properties are bought and where the properties are located on your list?
It just goes through our acquisition process, really. So we get presented with an awful lot of different opportunities. Each of those individual opportunities are taken on their own merit, and the ones that make it through our process are the ones that are basically offered to individual clients. They can be literally anywhere in the country. So it'll work on, without divulging too much, but it basically works on growth forecasts for each individual area. What the micro location's like, is it near to local amenities, what's the rental demand, what's the sold comparables in the area, local schools and infrastructure and businesses, and there's quite a lot of different things that go through each individual property. And the ones that basically achieve the right score through that process move to the next stage, and that's when they start getting introduced through to individual buyers, basically.
Yeah, so you're not going to be really looking at the lower value areas with no capital appreciation, like Hull or Liverpool or anything like that. You're going to be more into Middle England and Central England.
Yeah, typically, unless, I mean, don't get me wrong, we do have properties come available in the North East, and there was one quite recently actually, which was actually a brilliant property, and so they do come available in more of the lower areas, but there's typically a good story behind them as to where we think the growth is going to be, or if it can be bought at basically a good value where there's some additional value that could be made. So it's not a hard and fast rule to say that anything in the lower value areas won't make it through the process, because they do. It's just typically that for them to make it through, there's usually a good story behind it where we believe that the future growth for that particular property is going to be well supported, really, and a good option.
Yeah, of course. So Ron, again, we're going a bit off piste. If I did a delayed completion with the vendor, so I agreed to price of 180 after I've done the work on refurbishment, do I get commercial finance, and will they value it at the new value so I can draw some of my money back out? And can you suggest any lenders? Ron, I think probably the best thing to do is for you to jump on or one of my 3-day Zoom courses. But basically, if a property is worth 100 as it is, and we're going to do a delayed completion, exchange on it, spend 20 grand on it, and then it's going to value at 150, I would actually do a deal with a vendor where I'm actually buying it at 150, and my building company puts a charge on for the difference between the 100 and the 150 that gets paid out on completion. So that's kind of how I would structure that, run something along them lines. Okay, let's find out. Right, so Ivan, it's a question I got asked quite a lot last time. Do you only invest in the properties on your list, or do you co-invest in properties that other people have found?
Yeah, at this moment in time, we are only investing in pre-approved properties that have basically already been through the strict due diligence process that we undertake. That will change as we move into 2021, possibly Q2, or maybe into Q3, depending on how things work with the market and uptake and different things like that. So at this moment in time, it's pre-approved properties, but in the future, you will be able to bring other opportunities to us whereby we'd approve them and then invest with you at that time.
And the market at the moment, it's kind of gone unpredictably mad, isn't it, compared to what people were thinking 8, 10, 12 weeks ago?
Absolutely. I mean, when obviously the world ground to a halt as it did with COVID-19, everyone thought that the house prices were going to fall, and people were predicting anything between 10 and 30% drop. And basically what happened is, once the government stimulus and everything that came through and the market reopened, there was basically a lot of pent-up demand from buyers and sellers, and basically the market just really exploded. That people were riding the wave as such with that pent-up demand, and then obviously the Chancellor came in with the stamp duty reform and obviously introducing that holiday really for anything up to 500,000, and what we've seen, hopefully it will continue, is just that wave of positivity is just increased really, and everywhere you look throughout the country is everyone's reporting that just is a huge demand for property. So yeah, actually everyone was quite down on the market and expecting it to have a big downturn, and actually what we're seeing since March of this year is an acceleration of capital growth. It has just outstripped our own personal projections many times over. And it looks set to continue really, which is fantastic news.
Yeah, I'm pleased to say that somewhere, and it's literally because I'm at the coalface. And we've got a lot of my clients all out buying properties all over the country and everything. That we actually called this like 12 weeks ago, and everyone was saying I was mad. But yeah, it's been an unbelievable. And now everyone's predicting it's going to change in October when the furlough scheme stops. But let's wait and see. I'm not holding my breath or panicking in any sort of way. I think things will continue.
Just sorry to interrupt there, Glenn. It's, from our perspective, our whole the foundations of this model that we offer is our return is delivered through capital appreciation of each individual property over the medium to long term. So as I said earlier, the mean average anything between 5 and 13 years. Our belief for growth in that period is stronger than it ever has been. And even if the market was to take a little bit of a dip and a correction, over the medium term, 2, 3, 4 years and beyond, where we expect that growth to be is still in a very positive position. So hopefully it gives any of your listeners confidence that actually if we are saying and we are basing our future returns on capital appreciation of residential property throughout the country over a period of between 5 and 15 years, that should give everyone else a bit of confidence as well that if we're there and investing 100 plus million into residential property, then actually other people should be pretty confident as well.
Yeah, and I think the only stay away thing at the moment is the more expensive, £2 million plus properties in London, where the 3% stamp duty has had a major effect, because the 5 million property is like £500,000 stamp, and it's not leverageable. So somebody doing that has got to find a huge chunk of deposit money on top of the stamp duty, or you've got to find their deposit and a huge amount of stamp duty on top. So it's definitely causing a rebalancing of London, but not really anywhere else. So, right, okay. So if they're buying the properties, Amelia says, is there a new limited company as an SPV and not one that's already operating? I think, for definite, the common sense thing would be that if you already own properties in an SPV, you're not going to want to give 20% of that company away. So I would potentially be looking at setting up a new company for properties that you put through. But I remember last time that you do have a solution to that, don't you?
Yeah, the cleanest way is to create a new SPV for the purchase, and the thing that really ratifies that and supports that is actually the lenders as well. So if you're approaching a specialist buy-to-let lender for a limited company buy-to-let mortgage, maybe 75% loan to value, they will undertake their due diligence on you and the company. Now, if it's a brand new company, they actually like that. And our experience has proven that they prefer that to another company that may have been trading for a couple of years and they want to see the accounts, and if they're not all available, it can get quite a complicated process. So actually a new SPV that is created actually can sometimes be the cleaner, more efficient way to acquire a new property. In addition to that, if you already own a limited company that has property already, the lender will actually want a debenture over the company. And if you have a debenture with another mortgage company already, it can sometimes get a bit complicated with offering multiple debentures out to different mortgage institutions.
Okay, so I've had a few people have been asking for your contact details again. If you send an email to info@glenarmstrong.com, as soon as we get this latest list off of Dean, we will forward it out to everyone, and then if you're interested, we'll introduce you, and you can we'll take it from there. So let's have a look. Sanjay says, sorry, I missed the part. What was the return on the 20%? So I think they're talking about your 20% stake that you're taking in the property.
Yeah, and basically very quickly on that one is we have a processing fee of £1,995, which is paid at the point you purchase the property, and then when the property is sold in the future or refinance, it's basically we receive back a 20% share of the property value at that time.
Okay. Cool. What are the rough price brackets that you deal in?
As a typical rule of thumb, anything between 125 to 225 as a rough average of property value.
Yeah, so it's a fairly safe bet price bracket, isn't it?
There are some that come through cheaper, and there's some that go through a bit more expensive as well, but as a typical rule of thumb, that is the average range, really.
And you had a large block of, or a limited company that held 3 blocks of flats, didn't you? And you were going to either sell them to one person or across the whole lot. How did we do with that one?
Interest is high. Obviously, the capital required to support a purchase close to sort of £9 million is quite substantial, even with us underwriting sort of like 20% of the deposit requirements. The interest was high, but it's quite a serious purchase. But anybody who is used to that type of purchase or is an experienced landlord can certainly look at that. But something like that that's offering £400,000 plus, £450,000 plus rental income from day one because it's 100% occupied. It's quite an attractive proposition, should we say?
Okay. I've also got an interesting spin for everyone, and I'm not sure whether it's going to work within your thing, but there is a way that one of my clients has just found out, and potentially we can pass this on to, we can introduce this into everyone, but potentially there's a way of saving a big chunk of SDLT, and it's totally legitimate, and it's a little twist. I haven't read it totally, but basically there's potentially a way to save a chunk of the SDLT when anybody's buying any of these properties through you or buying any on their own, and it's quite an impressive response. I've actually sent it off to my accountant this afternoon and asked him the question, is this look real to you? And he's come back and basically said it all looks above board. So that could be even a more interesting way of getting some more of your properties through with people that don't have to find a stamp duty, especially with the extra 3% as well at the moment. If we can save a little bit more stamp duty on top of that, that would be even better, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing, we don't get involved on that side of the acquisition. Obviously, the stamp duty will be each individual purchaser's responsibility. But as we say, with anything, obviously the conveyancers will confirm that. But if it's an enhanced saving to be there, then obviously it just means people's funds can go even further.
Okay. If somebody wants to service accommodation, a property, that's going to be more down to the mortgage company, because I think if the mortgage company are happy with it, you're going to be happy with it, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Palmetto, yes, I can potentially, if I can get in a full understanding of the stamp duty route, maybe I'll interview the person who's next week on who's introduced it today. So there we go. Okay. We normally finish around 6:45. I've actually got an appointment later on, so I am going to finish fairly pronto. I think most of the last few questions are pretty much a repeat of properties that or questions that have already been asked. And David says, you know when they say if something's too good to be true, it usually is. David, what my philosophy is on when something's too good to be true is don't walk away from it, check it out and check it out more. I did, prior to speaking to, or allowing Dean to come and speak to everybody on here, I think we spent quite a lot of time, Dean, with me questioning you quite length about all of the stuff you know, your structure.
Absolutely, yeah. And to be honest, we're always quite an open book about it, really. There's nothing untoward about it. It's there. We are investing monies into residential property. We see it as it's thousands of units for us over the years to come. So it's quite a substantial market for us, really.
Yeah, for me, I would always look from the other angle and say what's in it for them. You know, if there's a legitimate reason why they're doing it, then that takes a large potential, not all the potential, out of it being something that's...
I think one point I can actually mention a little bit as well, which sometimes helps certain people understand it a little bit better. If you look at what we are actually offering here, is pretty much a very similar concept to what the government was offering under the Help to Buy scheme for new build properties. If you look at it, they're quite commonly available, but if you look at the returns the government's achieved through their Help to Buy scheme over the previous years, and understand actually how their money, what their return on investment's been as well, anybody will see that actually on that volume, whilst ours is nowhere going to be near as big as what the government have produced, if we can achieve similar returns to what the government has, then we will be very happy. So that's just another way to look at it, that this is something very similar has already been in the marketplace, which was underwritten by the UK government, and that's provided a return for them, as it will do for us as well.
Okay, and I'm going to finish on this question. What happens if properties go down in value that you've invested 20% in?
We lose money, basically.
So there we go, and you, Ivan, would lose 20% less.
Yeah, basically. But that just underlies actually our confidence in each of the properties that are offered, in the fact that we believe there is future growth on those properties. Okay,
cool. All right, look, next few days, Dean's going to forward us a list. Anybody who's interested that emails info@armstrong.com will be sent a copy of that list. And if anyone's interested in the properties, then you'll be introduced to Dean. And if there are any questions that have been answered and you're not understanding, or that we haven't answered because of how many questions I've still got here, most of which look like they're questions that maybe people have missed earlier on, then you can actually ask Dean when you actually come to look at evaluating the deal. So thank you very much, Dean, for joining us this evening.
No problem, thanks very much.
And sharing us the benefit of your experience in the previous sectors you've been in prior to this. I'm pretty sure that we will probably be chatting again in another 4 to 6 weeks ago. So it'll be interesting to see which way the market's gone, and I'm sure it's going to be all good. So thank you very much. A good evening to everyone. Make sure you stay safe out there. Please don't get complacent. And thank you one more time for joining us this evening, Dean.
No problem, sir. Thanks very much.
And I'll speak to everybody soon. Tomorrow evening I'm doing my Q&A. Actually, we're doing it the other way around, because Jeet's got a personal thing to attend to on Friday. So Jeet, mortgage broker's going to do tomorrow night, and I'm actually going to be doing Friday night with our Q&A. So take care, everybody. Have a great evening, and I'll speak to you all again tomorrow.